Hi there, everybody. This is Kevin with Country Music Time Machine, and this channel and this page and all the social media outlets have received millions of views and thousands of comments. One overriding theme among many of those comments is that country music died after the 1990s. Was the 1990s the last great decade of country music? Let's take a closer look. The 1990s, it wasn't just a decade, it was an explosion. Yes, I had to add sounds of explosions because I am a guy and we all love to blow things up, you know. In the 1990s, country music was everywhere. It was the decade I was working in country music radio. It was on pop radio, country music was, and its stars were selling out stadiums. And the sight of a cowboy hat was no longer regional. It was a national cultural phenomenon. From the dance floors doing that song that got played over and over and over, Achy Breaky Heart, to the anthems sung in dive bars. I know you remember Friends in Low Places. The 1990s represent the commercial peak of country music history. It was a time of unprecedented success, fueled by a new generation of superstars, like Garth Brooks, who blended the storytelling of country with the stadium rock energy of arena concerts. The beautiful Shania Twain, who brought more of a pop country sound to the genre, also added sexiness to country music. And the steadfast Alan Jackson and George Strait, who kept a foot firmly planted in the genre's traditional roots. Alan and George were a key to the greatness of country music in the 1990s. But as the decade closed, a distinct feeling settled in. This incredible golden age, this perfect storm of tradition and crossover appeal, was drawing to a close. The 1990s, in hindsight, represent the last great decade of traditional radio-friendly country music before the genre would undergo a profound and irreversible shift. The foundation of the 1990s country sound was actually a reaction. The neo-traditionalist movement, which began in the late 1980s, sought to bring back that fiddle, that steel guitar, and the simple, heartfelt storytelling that had been somewhat polished out of the earlier versions of what some people called countrypolitan music. Alan Jackson epitomized this revival with his genuine delivery and songs like Chattahoochee and Don't Rock the Jukebox. He was the anchor for anyone who loved the classic honky-tonk sound. He proved that you could be a massive star while keeping the traditional sounds front and center. Also, Clint Black and the dynamic duo of Brooks and Dunn, with their infectious boot scootin' boogie, initiating the line dancing craze of the 90s. They delivered music that was undeniably country in its DNA. It was the time of the hat axe, a term sometimes used sarcastically for the wave of handsome cowboy hat-wearing male artists. But these artists were, for a time, holding a perfect balance. They were polished enough for the mainstream, but authentic enough for the purist. This perfect blend of traditional instrumentation and slick modern production is why the 90s sound is so cherished. It had the soul of the past with the energy of the present. Now let's talk about the women. The 1990s weren't just about the men. It was the decade of female superstars, and they were fearless in pushing the boundaries. Shania Twain became the undisputed queen of country pop with the brilliant production of Mutt Lange. Albums like The Woman in Me and Come On Over were massive, selling millions and millions of records across the world. She brought a rock and pop sheen that made country accessible to a younger, more diverse audience than ever before. Faith Hill and Martina McBride delivered power ballads and anthems of empowerment, showcasing vocal prowess that could rival any pop star. Songs like McBride's Independence Day and Hill's This Kiss were cultural moments. The Dixie Chicks, now known as simply the Chicks, burst on the scene with their impeccable musicianship and fiercely independent attitude, selling millions with hits like Wide Open Spaces. The crossover success was the decade's main driver. The introduction of SoundScan technology in 1991, which provided more accurate sales tracking, revealed just how massive country's audience truly was, legitimizing its place as a mainstream force and pushing record labels to chase that huge commercial appeal. This ambition, however, would be the very thing that started to dismantle its traditional core. Yes, in many ways, you can blame the thirst for profits for the devastating impact to the traditional country music sounds in the decades after the 1990s. The high-water mark of the 1990s contained the siege of its own end. The massive success of the crossover artist proved to the industry that pop appeal was the new primary goal. This is why the 1990s are so referred to by many as the last decade of traditional country music. After 2000, the influence of rock and pop was no longer simply added to a country core, it became the dominant sound. The shift favored stadium rock guitars, stripped-back production, and themes focused on partying and youth culture, often sidelining the fiddles, the steel guitar, and the intricate storytelling that defined traditional country music for so long. This production became louder. The lyrics were generalized, and the distinct twang of the classic country voice began to be intentionally smoothed out to appeal to the widest possible audience. The door that was open for crossover megastars began to close on the smaller, more traditional artist. The heart of country music started fading away. With the genre's sound transforming so quickly, many artists who thrived in the 90s found themselves at a crossroads, unable or unwilling to transition to the increasingly pop-rock hybrid of the 2000s. Artists who were once staples on the radio, reliable hit makers, suddenly saw their airplay fade. Let's mention a few of them right now. Reliable, soulful hit makers like Tracy Byrd, great song Watermelon Crawl. Mark Chestnut, Too Cold at Home, continued to tour, but their commercial presence on the radio largely diminished after the millennium. Even major early 90s stars, like Ricky Van Shelton, a genuine powerhouse of the early 90s neo-traditional boom, chose to step away from the industry rather than chase the changing sound, retiring from music in the early 2000s. Their disappearance wasn't a failure of talent. They were super talented. It was a testament to the brutal shift in the industry's compass. The music they made was timeless, but the commercial machine decided it was time for a new sound, leaving a whole generation of beloved artists on the outside of the radio landscape looking in. But looking back on the 1990s, the 90s were more than just sales figures and chart records. They were a fleeting moment of perfection. It was a decade where the sound of the past and the ambition of the future met together, creating a rich, diverse, and deeply felt body of music. While the sounds of traditional country music may have largely left the radio airwaves after the 2000s, the heart, the stories, and the legacy of the 90s artists are absolutely enduring. So, for all the lovers of traditional country music, we can always hope for a revival of that sound like we did in the 90s. It may be exactly what we need to save country music. What do you think? Do you miss that 1990s country sound? Please pop it in the comments and let's discuss the great decade of country music, the 1990s. This is Kevin. This is the Country Music Time Machine. Let's keep it country.